name is Katie Hirsch. I'm a curator at the Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art. Tonight's discussion between Hamid Rahmanian and Mark Sloan is one in a series of In Conversation events that we'll host over the rest of the year for our virtual exhibition, Displacements, Revisitations of Home. Displacements may be experienced at displacements.org. Displacements, Revisitations of Home features the work of 10 artists who were asked to submit work that speaks to their own reflections of the meaning of home. Each artist was paired with a writer who responded to the body of work with an essay. Recordings of all conversation events, including this one, will be archived on the Halsey Institute's Facebook page, as well as displacements.org. We invite you to participate in the Displacements Project by visiting the Engage tab on the website. There, you'll find a phone number you can call to leave a message sharing your own stories of home, as well as a map where you can add your home alongside those of others. On the website, you'll also find a resources tab where you can download a teaching packet that you can complete on your own with children or send to an educator you know. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Displacements artist Hamid Rahmanian and his respondent, Mark Sloan. Hamid Rahmanian is an Iranian-American artist whose work intertwines reality, dream, and fantasy to explore what it means to be an immigrant. Hamid references events and histories from his own life, but his work ultimately alludes to a global narrative that defies countries and borders. He joins us this evening from New York City. Mark Sloan is the director and chief curator at the Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art. In his 26-year career at the Halsey Institute, Mark has organized 244 exhibitions featuring the work of 343 artists, including Hamid's 2011 exhibition, Multiverse. Mark joins us this evening from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We invite you to ask any questions you have for Hamid or Mark by entering them in the Facebook comments for this video or by emailing halsey@cofc.edu. Many thanks to both of you, Mark and Hamid, for your time this evening. I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, Hamid.
Hi, Mark. Long time no see.
Long time no see. So I thought we would do a little bit of background information about you. First of all, I was talking to one of my neighbors today and told her that I was doing this event tonight with an Iranian artist, and she said, "Why do you say Iran?" and I said, "Well, how do you pronounce it?" And she said, "Iran." So I would like to get the pronunciation correct. Iran?
Iran.
Iran?
Iran.
Iran.
Yes.
Okay, we have that clear now. It's not Iran.
No, it's not Iran.
All right, we've got that established. I also wanted to talk a little bit about your childhood before we get into the showing some of the images that we have tonight. You grew up in Tehran and you grew up during the Iran-Iraq War, correct?
Yes, in teenage era, I was in Iran-Iraq War.
And that was it a 7 or 8 year war?
Yeah, 8 years war.
Okay. So how old were you during that?
I was 11 to 19.
I see. And were there any, I know that Tehran was bombed at some point during that. So what was that like having your
city? It was, I remember vividly the first day of war and the last, with sometimes we had to leave Tehran because Saddam would say that we're gonna start bombing or sending missile to Tehran, so we will basically escape. And or sometimes, after a few years, it was we were kind of immune. We thought, oh, okay, this is gonna happen. So we had actually shelters in our neighborhood. We would go to shelters, no longer leaving town. And after a while, my father actually built a shelter underneath our house. So And that was the place that eventually became my dark room. I was developing pictures and things when I went to university. And one of my memory is I finished actually 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez during the bombardment of Tehran. That was my memory, was boom. And then
How
I was
ironic.
reading
Yeah.
about the Arco di Uomo
Yeah. Well, so that was a displacement of home, but within your home.
within your, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also during my teenage, like when I was 13, 14, because of the lot of brainwash of the kids that you have to go serve, being ideological, serve Islam, serve the Karbala, this and that. So when I was 14, almost, I actually manipulated my birth certificate to read as a 16 to be accepted to go to war. And then my mother found out and sort of reprimanded me heavily. And then the next best things, because I had a friend who lost all his brothers actually in war, and he was kind of, anyway, he eventually also died, killed in Iran-Iraq war, and I was going to join him. So actually I escaped from the house when I was 14. And then again, my family found out and they caught me at the train station trying to argue with the ticket booth to give me a ticket. I want to go to South.
Wow. So things could have ended very differently for you. Your life could have been very different.
Yeah. And then after that, it's like few months after that, I started listening to Pink Floyd. So, and then I changed my life.
Okay.
Changed my
Told
life.
me once that,
Dark Side of the
Dark
Moon
Side of the
changed my
Moon.
life.
Okay. That's great. They should know that. We should let the Pink Floyd people know.
I should call David Gilmour.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so when you were growing up, what career options did you feel were appropriate for a young man of your station in life? Engineering, physician, scientist, what was the prevailing?
The common understanding among families and parents that if your kids become engineer or the doctor, he would or she would have a secure life. So the art and culture, at least in my family, was not any horizon because my family are not very culturally were motivated. And so there are all mostly tradesmen and engineer and things like that. And so all the force on me was to pursue my career and my future into those fields. And I was really terrible in high school. My algebra, my physics, chemistry, everything. I was worst in my class. It was really difficult for me. And no one was there to tell me, okay, if you're interested in art, you should pursue yourself and go to art school, because there are art school in Tehran in terms of instead of going to high school and study like biology or math, you can go study art. And also at that time they look very down on you. They feel that if you're pursuing anything regarding to art and culture, because you are not smart enough to go to study math or physics. So it was actually, for me, it was a discovery to go to art school, because by the age I was 19, right, actually a year before the war ended, I had no idea you can actually go to art school. And by total coincidence, I met someone and he told me that he's going to go study for art for the college. And my first response was, do you actually study art? I thought you just do art. I had no perception. That's why I was so uneducated about this. And then within like 15 minutes, he walked me from my school. It was Alborz to a place that prepare you for the art school exam. Within like half an hour, I was there, and I just opened up the door and I realized, oh my God, this is the place I want to be. And then I just registered there, and from there till now, I never look back. So yeah, that's a friend.
So you went to art school there and you studied graphic design, and you excelled in graphic design And
Yeah, I
after
studied
graduating,
graphic design in Tehran University, which was very difficult to get in those days. There were 17,000 people applied in, what is that, 1986? And only the first 30 people out of 17,000 were ranked number 1 to 30, they could go to Tehran University to study graphic design. So I had to compete with all those kids that they had 4 years of background in art school, in high school. So it was a very tough and psychologically very draining for me. Yeah.
Hmm. But you excelled once you got in the program and became a very successful graphic designer, commercial graphic designer in Tehran, and had lots of big clients and
Yeah.
corporations and things within Iran that
Yeah,
were.
by the age I was 20, I start having, because I love what I was doing, and I never even dropped one day out of the school. I was like a sponge. I was just absorbing everything, and I would just learn everything I had to learn before, and I never had a chance. So yeah, and then I established a graphic design firm, and I worked for almost 4.5 years. And I had, by the age of like 22, I had around, off and on 12 employees that were working for me. Like, people were executing stuff. And those days there were no computer. So everything with hand, you cutting, fitting together. And I had a huge clientele in the big accounts. I was like 23, 24. And then I had like making so much money. I was very actually successful. I was known in my field. And then and
You
yeah,
decided to go to the United States and study.
yes, that was because I read a poem, Mark. I read the don't I read the poem. I was in my height of career. I had my like a TV interview here, the exhibition here, invited to this ambassador house, invited to prime minister, even all this kind of at the age of 23, 24. And then one day I was reading a poem by a Persian poet named Saadi. And he said, تنگ چشمان نظر به میوه کنند ما تماشا کنان بستانیم. It means the greedy ones look at the basket of flower or basket of fruits in the front of them, and they're happy with it, they're content. But we as a spectator, we are in search of garden. So I thought, this is like my life right now is like a basket of fruit in front of me, and I'm so young, and I need to move out. And that time also politically, we were during the terms that the President Rafsanjani was in power. So after I left Iran, Khatami came, which is a little bit, a lot changed after that, especially graphic design and art scene really flourished after that. But in that moment that I was there, I was kind of like hitting the end of the barrel, and I thought I need to open up my horizon and roots, expand my roots somewhere else. So that's why I left.
So you came to New York, and fast forwarding here, because I don't want to just spend all this time
Right.
talking. You moved to New York, and you didn't speak much English, and
Yeah.
you went to Pratt, and it was computer programming,
Animation,
but
yeah.
it was very much in the early days of that. And so,
1996.
Mhm.
Yeah. We were fighting. We had a machine that has a 1 gig of RAM, and all the students were fighting over that 1 gig. 1 gig.
And so once you had been there for a while, you then started making films, correct? And
Yeah,
animation.
I did animation, and that animation that did my thesis, I was very successful. I was nominated for the Student Academy Award. I got Emmy for it. I went to Annecy Film Festival, like next to Nick Park, and just like, again. And then I got hired by Disney, and I went to Disney. I thought, I'm gonna go to Disney and I be a Ferrari there. I'm gonna be like making movie. I'm gonna go to Disney and make movies. And then I got there, I was so naive. And then I realized I'm just like a screw in the big machine that is running 200 miles per hour. Whether I'm there or not is not really important. So I got a little bit disappointed. Very much disappointed. And I started making my own films. And then I returned to Iran. It was right after Mr. Khatami was in power. It was a different mood. It was the year of dialogue among civilizations, and it was 1999. And I thought, okay, I need to actually do something more important, not just doing graphic design or animation, things like that, doing something more effective for my society, for my, basically in the new home, because I left the home. Now I'm establishing my home, different place. So I need to be active participant in the new society. And I tell stories that create a bit of a different narrative about Iran and Middle East. Because once you come here, you know, with the idea you come to America, New York, this and that, all of a sudden as an immigrant from the Muslim country, and you come and you realize you're under a lot of basically attack, your culture, yourself, your everything you know about your past, and you know you have a, you know, you have a lot to offer to humanity, and it's all under attack. So, and everything you hear about us is all negative. Everything is about issues. Like, this is the issue of Iran, this is the issue, this is the human rights, this is the woman rights, this is this, like, it's just like constantly. And for me as an immigrant here, you know, if I was in Iran, I could be an activist. But when I'm here, what I can do, I can just create different narrative from my culture to for the rest of the people here as my new compatriots.
Right. So you went back to Iran to make at least one movie, two movies, I think.
I made 4 movies in Iran.
4 movies in Iran.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you went back, and I know one of them was called The Glass House that we showed at the Halsey, and
Yeah.
that's how you and I met the first time,
Right.
which was definitely an issue movie about young girls who had been
Right.
sexually assaulted, and it was a home for them, a safe place for them. And I was astounded at how you were received and welcomed by the young girls and women in that clinic. You were like a fly on the wall. They were so open
Right.
with you. But how were you received when you went back to Tehran after living in the United States? Were you seen as a Westerner who had been tainted? And you know, you go from Iran to New York, and you're seen as this, you know,
Yeah.
other, and then you go from New York back. What did they think?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of flashback, because I when I was here, I made a couple of documentaries. I made one documentaries about Melissa. I'm taking it back to Iran, and it became befriended with the family of the housekeeper of my parents' house. They are the family of the, you know, they go chant death to America, burn American flags, and they have 5 martyrs in their family. So, and now they have this American lady, and there is an interaction of the lady of the house with the American tall American ladies. So it actually was a very humorous documentary. It was very successful. We showed it all around. So that was kind of encouraged me to go in that path. And after that, I went to Iran to make a movie about the basically forgiveness and the higher value of humanity, because I found this story that it was the murderer, that he was going for execution in Iran, and the next of kin wouldn't show off on the day of execution. And in Islamic law, which is practiced in Iran, or called Sharia law here, there is the next of the kin who decide whether forgive or execute the person. So next of the kin can actually veto the verdict of the judge or the court. So if they say forgiveness, they get the blood money and they forgive the offender. If they want to execute and they want revenge, next of the king personally has to do that, execute the person. So there's a ceremony in the morning. Anyway, make the story short, I went to make that movie, and then that movie, I went there and I realized I'm actually foreigner into my native home. So it was, I felt I'm actually migrating to Iran, and people were looking at me as outsiders. So whether I'm here, I felt that whether I'm in America, I'm outsider, and going back to Iran, I'm also outsider. And the both sides, the society and the system, treat me as a foreigner. It was very difficult emotionally. That's why when I came back from Iran after finish that film, which is called Daybreak, I was extremely damaged psychologically, and that's why the story of multiverse came to my mind. So that's why I actually start writing that autobiography, which is about the man who lost himself, and himself is a person. So it's all about losing myself, whether here or there, and trying to, and also the concept of home. Where is home?
Okay.
And
Well,
where
that's
is your
a
root?
wonderful segue. Let's go ahead and put some images up on the screen, and maybe some of the images will prompt you to. Katie, could you just start at the first image up on the upper left? And
Yeah.
Hamid, do you have anything you would like to say about this?
Yeah, because in my story is the autobiography that I wrote. This is first of all the stories in this book are true. They all happened to me, but I made an allegory that basically to sort of push the narrative forward. So when I say I lost myself and myself as a person, I start having a history that when I start having a problem with myself. So the story was when I was growing up, the narrative was, okay, in order to reach the higher level of yourself, you have to be away from yourself. You have to divorce away from yourself. You have to kill yourself from within so you can reach higher level. And then when I was growing up, the narrative changed. So there, you have to love yourself. You have to be one with yourself. You have to take care of yourself. So I was conflicted. I should kill this guy or I should love this guy. So this image was the story of those kind of Roshan Fikr, it was called it, the intellectuals or enlightened ones that there comes throughout the history, just like I have all this narrative, like a Sufi's narrative, that you have to kill yourself from within, or you have to divorce away from yourself. You have to be selfless, and this is actually comes from that part of the story, which is this is one of the panels that there are over 99 panels in the, almost 100 panels in the whole book. But yeah, this is start from there.
So
Yeah.
can we go to the next one?
Which one is that? Oh, these are, so my mind is also a character. My mind is a very beautiful lady, very tall, gorgeous, with the high heels and the very, all shy. But she constantly nagging, she constantly crying, she constantly chewing her nails. And she has this dictionary, she has to look for the words. And, it's the whole character arc in this lady. So this is kind of representative of that lady and the conflict within herself that she has, which is the conflict I had in my mind. Like, for instance, she was an affair with my other senses. She was an affair with my stress and all this stuff. It's very humorous story, actually, but it goes very deep into my psyche. Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
This is a part of it. That was a part. I mean, that was one mind. There was a series of minds. It's a mind zone, mind company. Oh, this is the character of my wheel. My wheel is my first friend. My wheel is the one who motivated me actually to migrate it from my father to my mother. And where I was so tired and I had to sleep for 9 months. And, just that's another story into this book. But this is the character of my wheel. And when I grew up, this wheel that my character went to the circus and trying to break the wheel, the chains, and pulling very heavy weights. But here I have him that first, he's very proud of his culture. He's kind of like aroused with all this the Persianness you can see. And then in the back you have this an angel is sitting here, is whispering, and the other angel is bringing some crab to him. And there is also the burning of the religious rituals on his hand, and also he's been also executed. And he has also the headdress of Rostam, which is the main character of Shahnameh, is on his hand. But with it, and his hand is been screwed into the ground, can move. It's just like all the conflict as a person has. So, but he's holding the pose, with all this problem, he's holding the pose. So that was this kind of struck me to make.
So I would just like to point out to the viewers that just look at the visually the way this is put together. This is the consummate work of a graphic designer here. who took I'm imagining a very kind of straight looking photograph and turned it into this remarkable collage image, incorporating all of these different elements that he's describing. Okay, next image.
Yeah, these images that I created in this book in 2006 is eventually became like a inspiration for my following books, which we'll talk about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was part of my dreams. This one was all these people are walking with to me had a fish body, which eventually was because my thoughts in this story is a train locomotive operator is like a train of thoughts. So my thoughts is a hippie guy. He has a dog. His name is Desiree, and he's kind of take me around with his locomotive. And this is one of the dreams I had about this the fish out of the water. Basically it's displaced, basically it's a displaced, it's out of the water, and it's kind of like a it's like also it's like a what do you call it, the evolution, you know, of a fish from the from this water coming out and migrating and trying to find air, basically in different places.
Evolutionary displacement.
Yeah.
Okay, next image please, Katie.
Yeah, this is another character of my mind. These are all there are a series of these. These are created again in 2006 when I made this book. Yeah.
And I will point out that this to me is reminiscent of what was to come much later with the work that you did with the Shahnameh.
Totally, yes.
Okay, next image.
Yeah, this is called Mind Game. You know, again, this is the plots in the stories that I'm going through. These are sort of illustrations from what is happening, or those games that my mind is playing with me. So, and again, it has all this element that is later on became part of the Shahnameh. But this again, you can see the conflict. You know, at the top there is two men are fighting. And there is also on the right is the man is picking up and looking at her breast, and then but she's totally devoid of all these distractions, and she's playing her own game, which was I mean, through the story you see how she became damaged. Basically, in the story, she got raped by the Lucifer, which was actually kind of like a story of my producer in Iran, who really damaged so much, inflicted so much damage psychologically on me, and so that I felt that I was raped by this guy. So this is like my mind was raped. So this is a quite of like a precursor to get into that part that she eventually became like in my mind, she became a murderer, and became like those Greek goddess that start killing everyone. Yeah. So these are all the whole book is very cerebral, and it's all inside me, and I'm many characters, and it's all me. And the only person actually real in this story, which is a place to say, is Melissa, who is my partner, my wife, my love, everything. And she's the one who's sort of putting everything together. Makes me, I'm not really, I'm still exist in this life. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, this is a funny story. This is really a funny story, actually. This is the story that, because in this book also I tell some of my, I used to, not anymore, write down the events that happens to me, and it was very, very funny. I mean, as an immigrant. So it was, this story was, I was in the Macy's, and it's happened to me. It was 2003 or something. I was at Macy's, and I went there to buy a toaster, and usually people, when they look at my name, they say Hamid Rahmani, and they think I'm Arab. So this lady, the moment he saw my name, he said, "Oh, you're Persian, Iranian." I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" Because everybody think I'm Arab. He said, "No, I'm Greek, and I know that. But we in the history, in the history, we give you a big lesson to your Persians. We won the war, we did this, we did that. she was so excited about this being Greek and meeting a Persian, as if like yesterday, like army of Alexander just ran through the Persepolis. It just happened. Like she was so excited. Which at the end I was just telling him, you know, after she finished her rant about how great she is as a Greek and how historically they sort of won over us. And at the end I said, you know what, you're right, but look at now, who's on the page #1 of New York Times? When you open up the news, who's talking about Greek or Greek? I mean, nothing, everything talk about we, Iranian this, Iranian that. After 2,500 years, we still rule all the media. You guys, you Greeks are faded in the fog of history. So I turned that sort of dialogue, which was, I thought was very funny, into this chapter, which is called 2,000 Years Later in Macy's. And then at the end, it's just like a CNN's breaking news is Alexander army just reached the city of Persepolis, heavy fighting reporting, because the way she was actually excited about this historical event as if it's happened like yesterday to her. So that's goes. And that's me. Oh, this is the series that I have myself into the story. That's I'm actually there. I'm just you know, throwing arrows as a what is that, mortal guard on the left side. Yeah.
Next image.
And by the way, this format that people watching is a format of the book. So 1 page and 2 page. Oh, my worry or my worriness, I call it, are flies. So every time I get worried, which I get a lot, these flies comes and buzz around me. And I have another character who's my hope, who has usually comes with the spyglass and also the fly catcher, and he also has a stutter when he talks. Tomorrow is another day, so he always wants to give me hope for another tomorrow. So this chapter is, I'm talking about my worriness, which, you know, it's also, I play also in this book a lot with the way I talk English, which is a lot of problems and mistakes and grammatic, but I made it into the form of the narrative. Yeah. So this was.
So you could keep an entire army of psychoanalysts busy for a very long time.
Yes, you know, I had when I finished this first, when I gave it to an editor and edited, and she told me that she had a little bit of depression, and by reading this, she realized I can actually dissect myself into the different characters and deal with them separately. So that was the comment I got, and then she made the same comment. Said maybe you should either yourself look into this, go to psychotherapist, or just give this to the psychotherapist for a session for other people who have a kind of chronic depression. Yeah.
Okay, next image.
Yeah, this is kind of when I came here and I felt that I'm being confined by my surrounding, because, you know, being I made a joke that nothing in these days, nothing worse than being a straight married Muslim man and being bald in New York City, because there is no narrative for you. If you were, if I was a woman or homosexual or not being a Muslim or not being male or I was just something different narrative. So I had some kind of leeway. I have some narrative in the society supports my stories, myself, my effort, my whatever I do. But being a male, being also, I'm not the practicing Muslim at all. I was joking with you the other day, just like there is two kind of Muslim. There is a Muslim, they drink vodka with the shot, and there is a Muslim drink vodka with the bottle. So I'm not practicing, but
many other shades of
okay, so people, I was actually a friend of mine suggesting you should make a picture of yourself and send to all the grants that you're writing. You send a picture of yourself, you're drinking, you have vodka in your hand, and you're eating bacon, and you have makeups and all this kind of things. So that would be your self-portrait. So because I feel honestly, as a male Muslim, coming from, I'm Hamid Rahmanian, or actually my full name is Abdul Hamid Rahmanian, who know everybody, see my names and everything, it feel, okay, I'm like hardcore Muslim. And I'm a source of all the problems in this world right now. Every problem that women they have in the Middle East is me. Any homosexual they have is me. If politically there's a problem, is a Muslim. Everything is, I'm the source of all problems. So I feel there is really no space for me to move on. So this image is kind of, although I'm in my winter era, winter season, but I have place to grow, but I'm being confined. Anyway, these are the thoughts. It was some of the panels that talks to the narrative into the story.
Mhm.
What else we have here?
Yeah, what's the next one?
Oh, this is the story when I was growing up and I'm making, I was sort of participated in, the Iran Revolution when I was like 10 years old. And those days, actually, what I was doing, I was making postcards and pillar cards and office, I'm making all, without knowing that it's going to be my life when I was growing up. But I had this urge to make posters when I was like 9 years old. 10 years old, even like I found this spray can. The first thing I went on the streets and I'm making a stencil and, creating all this kind of thing when I was 9 years old, 10 years old. And so this is there is a section in the story that was talking about the series of people that are come and they're all looking for themselves, because the whole story is about finding yourself or myself. So I had a dream which is actually, this dream is true. That I had a dream that was this series of the people that were coming out and they're very angry and are all chanting myself. So they're looking for themselves. And then in my plots, I was sort of create this character that it comes and they were looking at me that you should also chant. And I said, I lost myself and I don't know where it is. And I knew myself, I wouldn't chant about myself. So it was like a conflict between these characters with me. And again, that's me in the middle of this. And I'm flying a kite,
Mhm.
which is, I think is for me symbolizing the creativity. Yeah.
Okay, next one.
Oh, yeah, this is the story I was talking about when I was going to Disney. After I got I made that animations, The Seventh Day, which was very successful in 1996. So I thought I had a lot of offer from different companies, but I thought I'm going to go to Disney and make an animation and I'm going to be a director. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So this is here on the left side, it says, this is what I thought I would be in the company. And on the right side, this is what's really happened to me. And this is what I actually was, just a bald.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I wish we had installation photos of the exhibition that was at the Halsey, because what we did for the show, Hamid and I talked about ways of presenting this is a book. The Multiverse Project is in the form of a book, a graphic novel. And so we wanted to try to translate that into an exhibition that was successful. Instead of just putting the two panels like you see here, just framing that and putting it on a wall, we wanted to create a much more immersive and interactive experience for the audience. So what Hamid did, what we came up with was this idea of, in a sense, breaking everything apart and reassembling it and in different scales on the wall of the gallery. So we used stickers,
Right.
stencils, and various things. And so some of the characters that you've seen from this were gigantic on the wall, and there were dragons coming in from the ceiling and all this stuff, but it was all just, we created, it was like a jewel box. I thought it was really quite beautiful and colorful
Thank you.
to enter that space, but you were really entering the mind of Hamid. Next picture.
Oh, yes. So, you know, the book starts, it says, if you add Master and Margarita, which is a famous Russian novel, to the Sufis work, and then divided, I'm sorry, if you add Master and Margarita to Sufis, to Little Prince, and divide its outcome to Sufis world, you have multiverse. So that was the parts that I was kind of like, it comes from the Little Prince. And I was kind of here, I'm looking at myself, I'm pondering about myself. And I'm repeating. And in this story also, we have a lot of black holes that I'm shooting a different universe. Because the whole story, actually, I'm an alien landing in the new planet. The whole story starts that I'm alien I migrated from the mother planet and then landed to the new planet, and the plot was, which is actually true. I used to have a lot of hair when I applied for my citizenship. I applied with the picture with a lot of hair. So when I sat down in front of the officer after a year and a half, almost 2 years in the process, and then I was shaved, and that day actually I shaved twice. I bladed, so became a very clean immigrant sitting in front of so they think I'm worthy of being in the United States. And then after like going over 400 pages of my documents, she looked at me in my pictures, and I literally I had this much hair. I mean, don't look at me now. I had this much hair, and she looked at me. I said, "This is not you." And then I said, "No, this is me." He said, "No, this is not you." He said, "I process it, but I would be holding it this till you send me a new picture of yourself. Until I processed you, if you send me by like this date, is okay. If it's not, I'm going to postpone it for the next round, which is like 8-9 months." And it was right after 9/11. It was really stressful. So my whole story started when I leave the federal building in Brooklyn, and I'm trying to find myself to take a picture of me. So that's how my journey starts. So these are the part of that journey that I'm trying to find myself, to take a picture of me, to go to become a legal immigrant, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
I would like to just add that one of the reasons you were one of the artists that came to mind immediately when we were discussing, the staff and I were discussing the displacement show. This particular project came to mind because you told me at the time that you were, in this project, you were an alien in a foreign land, and that's how you felt, and that is the feeling of someone who is totally displaced and you feel out of place within this other culture, and that almost no matter what you do, you're misunderstood. It's the language barrier, the bizarre customs, the phraseology of English, which you didn't grasp at the time, I think, must have been very confusing. And so you were at a time in your life when you felt that you were misunderstood no matter what you did.
Yeah, I'm still the same way. I told you about that. I just got, after all these things I have done, or my last show, I just got a rejection based on I'm not Persian enough. Like 2 weeks ago, I got rejected from the big grant, and they told me why. And it was 2 reasons. And one of them was the jury, they thought I'm not Persian enough. So I don't know what to do in this country, really, to be a same player in the field. I feel I'm always in the margin, and I'm going to remain in the margin. There is no way I'm going to be the main player. They don't let me to come. It's not even conservative or liberal. It's just like this foundation are run by liberals, and they don't want to hear any story from me. mean, not the story that a particular set story, just like my work, my story. That's why I get award, but I never, almost hardly ever receive grant. I always get rejections, but I managed sort of to do what I am doing. But that's probably is more.
Those grants are out there, Hamid, and yeah, we'll make sure that one
But
drops.
I'm not Persian enough to receive those grants.
Come on. So, well, that's an interesting segue, and I know that we're running a little bit long on time, but into the Shahnameh, and if you could talk just a little bit about what that project was, and that it turned into Feathers of Fire, which we watched last week, which you were so generous to allow us to let our members watch. I hope that there are lots of people out there who had a chance to see that. It was just fantastic. And that is, Feathers of Fire grew out of a book that you did where you commissioned a writer to translate Ferdowsi's poem, the Epic of the Kings.
Persian Kings, yeah. Shahnameh.
Shahnameh, the Epic of the Persian Kings. And it had not been illustrated in how many years? 400 years?
No, the last illustration was almost 110 years ago.
110 years.
But it never been illustrated in this massive volume. There is only one book that you have in early 17th century. It was illustrated in Isfahan. There was a lot of illustrations, but after that is the book that I illustrated. Yeah. We have over 600 pages book is over 500 pages of illustrations.
Okay, and it's available on Amazon, and we'll make sure to put that on the link to the book on our.
Or they can go to Kingorama and they
Kingorama website. That's your website, and you can buy it from there. That's great.
Yeah, because after I finished the Glass House, I dedicated myself to creating this body of work, because I felt that I need to be I need to sit down one place, which is very important. My father told me, because I was constantly traveling, making project, going back to Iran, making project, going back to America, making project, going to Los Angeles, going to New York, going back to, I was all over the place. And my father told me that, Hamid Jan, dear Hamid, you have to learn from onion. If you sit in one place, you're going to get roots. If you constantly move around, you're never going to get roots, because it is, correct, because I was establishing certain kind of networking around myself in America, and then I would lose it and I would go to Iran, and then I create a little bit of networking there. I sort of became familiar with the system, how to work, and then come back here and then move to another city. So middle of all this mayhem, that voice of my father really resonated with me. And that's happened because we went to the Toronto. I had a screening of my last film, The Glass House, and we were invited to a concert that the Philharmonic of I think Toronto Philharmonic, they did something about the Shahnameh, and they invited this Naqal storyteller to tell the story with the totally Western setting and the music. And after, in 10 minutes, I was watching this, and everybody was very chic with their papillon and tuxedos, sitting, watching this, and oh my God, this and that. I got so bored, Mark, and I just like, oh my God, and turned to Melissa. I said, what? We have so much treasure, so much stories, so much materials, ingredients to create fantastic work that's presentable in the Western society, but we don't do it. We are not doing it. And Melissa turned back to me and said, you Iranian, you always say you have this, you have that, you're the source of this, you invented this and that, but you don't, that was like 2000 years ago. What do you have here now? What do you have to offer now? And I thought, wow, that's really true. We have nothing to offer. Everything we talk about is past. Or if something we offer in the society is all academic, which is boring. No one's in the street, they want to read, unless you go to school and university, you read those texts or study of architectures. So I thought it would be my responsibility and my challenge also to Melissa to say, I can show you what I can do. So basically, because I came from that visual culture and I love those miniature lithograph I grew up with and I'm comfortable with, I thought Shahnameh, the Epic of Persian King, I mean, the Book of Kings, it would be a very good vehicle to carry this visual culture. So what I did, I basically collect and put together over 8,000 pieces of miniature and lithograph from late 14th century to mid 19th century, anything influenced by Persian school of painting, from Mughal India to all the territory of Ottoman Empire, which is the entire larger Middle East, okay, into this 500 page. And then I hired a translator, Dr. Sadri, to translate the book based on the parameter and the framework that we set, because we came from the movie, we are making movies. We thought we should make it into the character-based narrative, because Shahnameh is like any other epic stories. It's full of names and characters and plots within the plots within the plots. And sometimes if you're not familiar with, you're gonna get lost, or sometimes you get bored. Yeah, I wanted to make it very accessible and very easy to read, and you follow the character, you don't miss the character, and you go through the whole book without any language barrier. You don't need to have the no GRE or the SAT or TOEFL masters. You know, people in the street, they can actually read it and understand it. So Ahmad did a fantastic job. Melissa edited to make sure that the story is fully fluid. And and also meanwhile I was illustrating the book. It was actually this corner that you see me, I sat down over modest number 10,000 hours in the course of 4 years, and I sort of collected all these things and put it bits and pieces together, from the eyebrow to the mustache, face, hand, feathers, all different schools of painting. And it became that 600 book page. And that was a very successful book. We are right now, we are ready to go for the 7th printing. Is the most, is actually, according to my publisher, we are a top 5 best-selling book in its price category. We are competing with the Sex Book of Madonna and the Red Book of Carl Jung. So, and based on the success of that, I created different kind of branch within that roots that I planted, that tree. So that was the pop-up book, and then I made the audio book, which is also I illustrated with the sound. There is, if people are interested, listen to this pop-up audio book. There is no audio book in the market. It's like that. I basically, what I did with the illustration and miniature and lithograph, I did with the sound. I basically got over 438 different sound and music instrument and sound effect, and I licensed them and I recomposed them together, create this sonic landscape of the epic.
Can we find that on King-O-Rama also?
Yes, it's on Audible, Amazon, and I have Francis Ford Coppola read the introduction to it.
Nice.
Because my argument, because Francis came to my show 3 times, twice backstage, 1 front stage, and you know, he really liked the show, and he knew about Shahnameh, so we established a friendship. And when it's finished, the audiobook, when it's finished, I sent it to him and said, since you like Shahnameh, this is what I did. And after around 2 months, he came back to me and said, oh, I loved it. This is reminding me of my childhood. This is reminding me of all those TV drama, a radio drama that is no longer making it. This is like a different level. And I said, Francis, if you like it so much, why didn't you read the introduction? Because I need the stamp of approval of the white man. Because nobody take you seriously unless another person comes and say, it's not bad, you know, and then people will accept you.
Yeah.
Because usually
I highly recommend it for everyone to have a look at the Shahnameh and to go to Hamid's website. We're nearing the end of our time here. I would like to make room for some questions from the audience.
Oh, yes, please.
So Katie, do you have some thoughts from the audience?
I do, and thank you so much, Hamid and Mark. I hate to jump in here, but we have a lot of people who are also curious about your work, Hamid. And I have a few questions, and we'll get to what we can. And the first question is: apart from your personal contributions, how large do you think the gap is between the Iranian understanding of U.S. culture versus the U.S. understanding of Iranian culture?
Oh, that's a very deep question. Thank you. Let me think about it a little bit. I think I think honestly, because the family of my wife from Midwest, I think American are very, first of all, generous people. We're very philanthropic. One thing actually stands out within the American people. They're very giving. I don't think any other culture or any other the nations, they have this idea of the philanthropy that the Americans they have. And that's, I think, the problem with the American people understanding of us is back to the media and the political kind of the ideology that exists in this country, because America somehow they need some kind of enemy outside of in the Middle East, so perhaps to sell weapons. So they want to have Iran around so they can actually sell weapons or do their business. And so after the revolution and also hostage crisis and all this kind of thing, they create these monsters out of us. And also like entertainment business, they did that awful movie called Not Without My Daughter, which is to these days when I go back to my Melissa's family who are in Oklahoma, they were talking about that. I mean, at the beginning, when 20 years ago, when I got married, they were afraid that I'm gonna steal Melissa to Iran, and you know, this kind of idea. So they, for last 40 years, they constantly media mismanaged the information about my culture, and they basically, out of a symphony that is called Iran, they just play for you a note of this symphony, and this note is all negativity. And also people who comes from my culture, like Iranian artists, they actually didn't add to any of this note. In fact, they amplify that note. So most of the art that comes out of the Iranian is all the art of the criticism, art of the activism, which is okay for them, but it doesn't really help anything to our understanding of a deep culture that we have in the Middle East, in America. So I think the part of it is media and the political, which is the political arm of the governing system, that it create that narrative. But Iranian come to America, we are, you know, we have a very, I think we are very educated people. If you go to Iran, they know about American politics sometimes, most of the times, than Iranian and the American here, native American here. So, so we have a lot, and also we want to be accepted. That's very important, because when you're under dog society, the culture, when you come here, you want to do a double to be understood, basically, in this culture. So this is a clash. So my work, I'm trying to create create a bridge. So you're not constantly emphasizing and the shortcoming of the culture. So you create a little bit of showing also the highlight of the culture. Okay, we have also a very strong literature culture, the literary culture. We have a very strong visual culture. You know, this kind of things to create kindness and understanding between people, because it also show the contribution that we have for the humanity, and what Iranian or Persian they contributed to the world culture. Yeah,
that's a great answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we have time for maybe one more question.
Yes, I wanted to ask, so just speaking, you know, Mark asked you about how you yourself were received, but hearing you talk about the work that's being made in Iran right now, you know, how is your work received not you, you know, your work that you're making here, Multiverse, Feathers of Fire
Wow, in Iran?
in Iran.
I mean, except last few weeks that few university, even like one university in some part of the eastern part of the Iran, they don't cover me much. Even when I was making movies and I was got a lot of awards for my film, I don't know why. I mean, just maybe it's, I don't know. I not much. I mean, they show the Feathers of Fire through one of these networks that they broadcast out from outside of Iran to Iran, and people love it. You know, I get a lot of compliments, but in terms of like a write up or something like that, I not much. Yeah, not much.
Interesting. Well, we have time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I mean, when I invited me to in university to talk about the Shahnameh and to write about it, I was just very excited, and I wrote it, and just like you know, after these 12 years of working on Shahnameh, 11 years working on Shahnameh, and you create all this body of work, and never really knock on my door. Let's talk about it. I mean, I was not really expecting it because I'm no longer living there, and my audience is mostly non-Iranian, and I'm making a work for first generation Iranian. Of course, they enjoy it, but also for the people in the street, the people who basically enjoy, for instance, Mulan or Hercules, or read Lord of the Ring or Star Wars. I want those kids, they connect to my work, and I'm trying to reach out to actually younger generation rather than the adult, because I think those are the future. And if I plant something happy, nice, positive in their mind, and devoid all this politics that comes and goes, I can maybe in the future you have something good comes out of it. That was my the effort. Yeah.
Well, and I know you've performed it, Feathers of Fire, all over the world. So
yes, and that's just, imagine Iowa, that is red state. We perform for around, I mean, from the North Iowa to, I traveled to South in the winter of 2018. We performed for over 43,000 kids. Imagine, and then the kids, the parents with the kids were walking to me. A few times it happened that came to me and say, after the show, my kids turned back to me and said, "Dad, it's cool to be Persian." This is a good effect. It's better than a lot of all this activism that happening here. You're actually making a mark effect for young minds.
That's incredible. I do have one more question. Just thinking about, right now we just had one of our most American activities, right? We're electing new leadership and awaiting answers there. But thinking about you as an immigrant, how long did it take until America felt like it was your home after naturalizing? And do you feel, do other Americans often reciprocate the same feeling? And how does that contribute to the feeling of displacement? This is a question from a Facebook viewer.
You mean, can you repeat the question? Because it's so multifaceted and it's a question.
It is. There are a lot of answers here. How long did it take to feel like America was your home after
naturalization? America or Brooklyn?
Well,
yeah. So yeah, I'm this corner that you see, the last almost 20 years, I'm sitting in this corner. So I migrated from Tehran to the corner of Brooklyn. I mean, honestly, I'm in the process. I feel my home is here in America. Especially, I have a child who's Iranian American. I have one offspring. And so probably the moment I have kids, so now I have a different feeling. I'm part of this. I'm participating in voting. I'm participating in many political activities as much as I can with my art. So I feel I'm part of this society, but honestly, I don't know the pulse of this society. I don't, I'm to these days, I don't know I don't know where to go and start something. Or, I mean, that's why probably some of my work is very individualistic, you know, just very, it's very me. It's because I don't know. I mean, people, when you grow up, you have some kind of this a system, or you understanding, or you be accepted to this system, or you go. But for me, I never felt that, and I never found that. So that's why I sort of hide myself in this corner and creating my own bubble. You know. So what was the other part of that question? Because there was another part of that question.
Do you feel that perhaps reflected, so it said, conversely, do other Americans often reciprocate the same feeling? So maybe do you feel it reflected back to you that you are an American from your
Oh
fellow,
no, I never felt it that I'm in. I mean, like from other people that I feel
from
no.
other
Even I have a mask this day. I go out and somebody tell me yesterday, said, so where are you from? I said, how did you understood from here that I'm not from here? Yeah, it's and also I somehow I never lost this accent I have. It's kind of like my charm. So I never could actually the moment I open up my mouth, they feel I'm not belong to this place. So yeah, it's always, I never felt that I'm, I mean, I never felt from other people that I'm American, never.
And I guess, well, one more question. It was the third part of that, was how does this contribute to the feeling of displacement? The fact that you have a child that grounds you in feeling, you say that helps ground you in feeling American, and yet that's not reflected by your fellow countrymen who are American. So how does that contribute to this feeling of displacement?
Listen, there's some of this feeling, we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, this feeling is not really important because this comes and goes. What is important, what actually I can actualize from this feeling, which is my work. I mean, it's like, even you're depressed, or you're very hyped up, or you're happy, or you're sad, you're rejected, at the end of the day, you have to keep going and you have to build content. For me, is I have to build content and I create a footsteps so you can also or create a foundation. So after me, people are coming and making more stuff. So sometimes I kind of tell myself, Hamid, shut up and just work. Not constantly thinking about this thing. So that's my mantra, actually. Hamid, shut up and work. And that's how I make myself, with all the rejections and all these kind of things I have, especially, financially, to build all this project. It's very daunting task because I fund all my projects. I do all the fundraising myself, among other stuff. So I'm just constantly telling myself, Hamid, shut up and work. Hamid, shut up and work. That's how I put myself into discipline.
Well, we can see it's worked because you've made amazing work. And I think that's a great sentiment to end on tonight. It's keep going, and we're building a foundation for the future.
Yes.
We can apply that to many things.
Yeah, we are a new group of immigrants in the United States. We are not like Italian, Irish, Jews that are like have a history. We are like 30 years, 40 years the most. We have a history of, and we don't have much content to offer. So I'm trying to create those contents from my culture. Yeah.
Well, we at the Halsey Institute are happy to have been pulled into your orbit, and
you guys are amazing.
So thank
You're
you.
one of a kind. Mark, you are part of my. If Mark was not here, Mark was. I never met Mark. I wouldn't be here. Seriously, Mark paved all this road for me, and I'm really grateful for that, Mark.
He's done that for so many, and we're all grateful. I'll echo that to Mark, and we'll make him embarrassed. But we'll wrap up now. And I want to say thank you to Hamid and Mark for your time and for sharing your minds with us this evening. And thank you to our viewers for all of your comments and your questions. But this evening's talk between Hamid Rahmanian and Mark Sloan is one in a series of events that will continue to take place. So be sure to join us on Thursday evening, November 12th at 7 p.m. here on Facebook Live for a conversation between artist Renee Stout and Thatika Robinson. In the meantime, please visit displacements.org where you can experience Hamid's work and Mark's response, and be sure to put those upcoming events on the calendar. We also have a survey that we'll include in the Facebook comments here. We invite you to provide feedback about tonight's event. We can't wait to hear what you've thought. But thank you again so much, Hamid and Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Hamid.
Mark.